My name is Oliver, and I am 37 years old. I never thought I would return to my hometown, a small coastal village in northern Scotland, but life has a way of reshaping plans. After traveling for years, working as a freelance graphic designer, and exploring cities from Oslo to Vancouver, I finally felt an unexplainable pull. My parents' old cottage sat empty, overlooking the rocky shore where seals sometimes appear at dusk. The day I arrived, gray clouds hovered low, and the wind carried a briny scent of seaweed. Despite the chill, my heart found comfort in familiar surroundings. I spent my first week cleaning dust from the cottage, reviving the old fireplace, and rediscovering corners that held childhood memories. Late at night, I would walk along the pebbled beach, inhaling the crisp salt air. An odd loneliness mixed with serenity settled over me. My neighbors recognized me, greeting me warmly, yet they also seemed slightly distant, as though my long absence had erected a subtle barrier. Still, I appreciated their kindness. One afternoon, I strolled to the local tea shop, only to find it transformed into a cafe. Little did I know how crucial this place would become. I pushed the door open and was greeted by the scent of freshly ground coffee. The walls were painted a soft turquoise, and rustic wooden tables added charm. Behind the counter stood a man about my age, with chestnut hair tousled and sleeves rolled up to reveal sturdy forearms. He offered a cordial smile. His name tag read, Gabriel. I ordered a cappuccino, hoping to keep the exchange brief, but something about his warm expression encouraged conversation. When he asked if I had recently moved here, I explained that I was returning after many years. He listened intently, nodding with genuine interest. I sat down at a small table near the window, where I could watch seagulls drifting above the shoreline. Gabriel prepared my cappuccino with deft movements. As he placed a cup before me, I noticed his eyes, bright and thoughtful, reflecting a calm confidence. I thanked him, and he lingered. We chatted about the cafe's renovation, how the village was slowly modernizing, and my uncertain plans for staying. He suggested I attend a local community event at the old town hall that weekend, mentioning it was a great chance to meet people. I agreed, feeling an inexplicable spark at his invitation. That weekend, I found myself at the town hall, which stood proudly with its weathered stone walls. Inside, stalls displayed handmade crafts, local treats, and informational tables for clubs and organizations. Soft music played from a corner, where a small band performed Celtic tunes. Amid the lively chatter, I spotted Gabriel discussing fair trade coffee with an older woman. He waved me over, introduced me, and soon we were laughing about my struggle to remember everyone's names. I had forgotten how strong community ties could be. Standing beside Gabriel, I felt both a sense of belonging and a pleasant, gentle tension. As dusk approached, people began to leave, arms full of purchases and hearts full of camaraderie. Gabriel offered to walk me back home, since he lived nearby. We ambled through cobblestone streets, the moon overhead illuminating old lampposts. Our conversation flowed effortlessly. He told me about his previous job in a bustling city, how the stress drove him to seek a quieter life. I opened up about my travels and why I'd returned. At my gate, we paused, neither wanting the moment to end. The way he looked at me stirred something I hadn't felt in years, a hopeful flutter. In the following days, I settled into a new routine. Mornings spent designing freelance projects on my laptop, afternoons exploring the village, and occasional evenings helping Gabriel close the cafe. We would chat while wiping tables, exchanging jokes, personal stories, and heartfelt opinions about life. One night, he asked if I'd like to sample some new coffee blends after hours. We brewed several pots, testing flavors from Ethiopia, Colombia, and Sumatra. The cafe was empty, lights dimmed, and the rich aroma enveloped us. Somewhere between the second and third cup, our hands brushed while reaching for sugar, and time seemed to halt. Gabriel's eyes flicked to mine, and I noticed the slightest hint of vulnerability there. My own heart pounded so loudly I was certain he could hear it. Tentatively, I laced my fingers through his. Warmth radiated from his palm, and I realized in that moment how deeply my life had lacked genuine connection. He smiled, voice low, admitting he'd felt drawn to me from our first conversation. It felt surreal, like stepping into an unexpected chapter. Leaning closer, we shared a soft, tentative kiss over the countertop. My stomach flipped with a mixture of excitement and disbelief at this delicate bond. In the glow of that single overhead light, we decided to stop questioning and just enjoy the present. The days that followed were like a series of stolen moments. We'd meet early, sharing breakfast pastries before customers arrived. He'd text me mid-afternoon, asking about my work, or invited me for a brisk walk along the shore. After sundown, I'd sometimes slip into the cafe just as he was locking up, and we'd walk side by side through the hushed streets. Each encounter chipped away at my guarded heart. Yet uncertainty lurked, reminding me how fleeting my stays had been before. One evening, Gabriel closed the cafe early, suggesting we attend a small gathering at a neighbor's barn, where locals played folk music every Thursday. Lanterns hung from rafters, and straw bales were arranged as seats. The lively reels and jigs coaxed them to dance. We perched on adjacent bales, shoulders brushing. An older couple recognized Gabriel and teased him kindly, saying they'd never seen him bring a special friend. Heat rushed to my cheeks, but he merely grinned. The mood was contagious. Halfway through a particularly rousing tune, he pulled me up to dance. My laughter mixed with his in cheerful abandon. That night ended with us returning to my cottage. The soft moonlight played across the coastline as we entered the warm interior. Gabriel seemed hesitant, scanning the living room filled with relics of my childhood. He trailed his fingertips along an old photograph, where I stood grinning beside my parents. We ended up in the small kitchen, sipping tea and revealing secret hopes. Somewhere between confessions of past heartbreaks and shared dreams, we gravitated closer. His kiss felt more confident, hands sliding around my waist. My thoughts spun with the realization that something real and stirring was unfolding between us. In the weeks that followed, we navigated a cautious dance between our individual lives and our growing attachment. I discovered aspects of Gabriel's personality, his fierce loyalty to friends, how he helped struggling neighbors without seeking recognition, and the way he found meaning in simplicity. He learned about my wanderlust, my fear of stagnation, and the guilt I carried from leaving my parents behind before they passed away. On cloudy afternoons, we'd curl up on my sofa, the fireplace crackling, as he explained his approach to coffee roasting or shared anecdotes of his old life. Each day, trust grew steadily. Yet, a lingering tension hovered over us. I had never planned to stay indefinitely. My freelance projects sometimes required travel, though I attempted to keep them remote. One day, I received an offer to photograph a series of cultural events in Dublin, lasting 2 months. The pay was substantial, the career boost significant. Nervousness gnawed at me as I weighed telling Gabriel. Eventually, I confessed, bracing myself for his reaction. To my surprise, he offered unwavering support, insisting I shouldn't limit my ambitions. His only request: we communicate daily, and that I return if I still believe we had a chance. Encouraged by his confidence, I accepted the job. Before I left, Gabriel and I spent a final evening walking along the shore. Waves crashed against the rocky beach, and the autumn wind carried a bite that made us huddle closer. He confessed he hadn't felt this level of connection since his university days, and I admitted I was terrified of losing him. We shared a lingering kiss, the sound of the sea underscoring our unspoken fears. That night, we fell asleep in each other's arms. Neither of us wanted to face the morning when I would board the train. 2 days later, I was in Dublin, cameras slung around my neck, capturing vibrant street performances and local festivals. Yet, part of my mind stayed on that Scottish coastline. Gabriel and I texted often, exchanging mundane details. His new scone recipe, the changing weather, my frustration with lighting issues. Video calls late at night bridged the gap, but I couldn't shake the ache of absence. People around me praised my creativity, but all I wanted was to share my successes with them in person. Sometimes, I'd see couples strolling hand in hand and feel a pang of longing. One damp evening, after a grueling day of shoots, I returned to my temporary flat. My phone blinked with a missed call. Instantly, my chest tightened. Listening to Gabriel's voicemail, I heard excitement in his voice. The cafe had won an award for its ethical sourcing, and journalists wanted to interview him. He sounded elated, but also vulnerable. I sensed he wanted me there to celebrate. Without hesitation, I booked a train ticket back home for the weekend. My Dublin contract allowed short breaks, and I decided a quick trip was worth any logistical inconvenience, just to see him smile. The train ride felt interminable. Each clack of the wheels matched the thud of my heart. Arriving at night, I hurried from the station to the cafe, hoping to catch him before closing. The window glowed warmly under the street lamp. Through the glass, I saw him wiping down tables. My entrance startled him, and for a second, we stood there in a breathless pause. Then he rushed forward, practically knocking chairs aside to reach me. Our hug was fierce, emotions swirling unspoken. The awkwardness of distance dissolved the moment our foreheads touched. We laughed, tears threatening to spill over. That weekend was blissful. Gabriel introduced me to the reporters, beaming when they praised his passion for sustainable coffee practices. I snapped photos, capturing his proud stance, the twinkle in his eyes. At home, we curled up together, the sound of the sea a comforting background. Yet a shadow remained. I had to return to Dublin soon. On Sunday evening, as we strolled near the shoreline, he voiced his worries. What if my career always pulled me away? Could I ever truly settle in this quiet village? I held his hand, admitting I didn't have all the answers, but I wanted to try. Reluctantly, I went back to Dublin, where the final weeks passed in a blur. Gabriel and I clung to each other via text calls and occasional photos I'd send from my shoots. He updated me on the cafe's booming business, new blends, and the ways he experimented with flavors. Despite our attempts to remain positive, cracks appeared. I sensed his loneliness, and I, too, felt incomplete. The tension of balancing ambition with love weighed heavily. Sometimes, I stared at the city lights, wondering if success was worth the growing distance between us. Each day, returning to him felt paramount. Finally, the project concluded. I returned to the village with my equipment, stepping onto familiar cobblestones under a drizzle. The cottage welcomed me like a long-lost friend. Gabriel was waiting inside with dinner prepared, smoked salmon, roasted potatoes, a glass of wine. But I noticed exhaustion in his eyes. Over the meal, he acknowledged how hard it was to keep faith when I was gone for weeks. He insisted he didn't resent my career, but feared an endless cycle of goodbyes. I reached across the table, taking his hand, explaining that I, too, wanted stability. Only I hadn't known how to create it. We spent the next few days discussing our hopes and limits. Could we find a middle ground? I proposed setting a home base in the village, taking only short assignments or working remotely. Gabriel confessed he'd support me, but needed reassurance I wouldn't vanish for months at a time. Together, we mapped out possibilities, partial relocations, scheduled visits, or even traveling together if feasible. Each option carried uncertainty, yet we felt relief in forging a plan. I saw a spark of optimism return to his face. Late one night, tangled in sheets, we sealed our vows with whispered promises. As winter approached, storms battered the coastline, and the cafe became a refuge for townsfolk seeking warmth. I helped Gabriel redesign the interior, hanging prints of my photographs on the walls, giving the space a personal touch. Customers commented on the synergy between the images and the coffee aromas. Word spread, attracting weekend tourists. We found ourselves busier but content. In quieter moments, I'd study Gabriel's face across the room, struck by how natural this felt, building a life together. I began turning down lengthy contracts, accepting more localized work. While my earnings dipped, My spirit felt more anchored. Inevitably, rumors circulated. People noticed the closeness between Gabriel and me. A few older folks whispered about us, but nothing overtly malicious. The majority welcomed our happiness. Some customers teased that we were the cafe's resident love story. Though we blushed at first, eventually we embraced it. One weekend, we hosted a small event showcasing local artisans, my photographs, and fair trade coffee talks by Gabriel. Villagers gathered, mingling in the warm glow of string lights. The evening ended with folk music, and I found myself dancing with him in front of everyone. To my surprise, applause and cheers erupted. That night, as we locked up, Gabriel leaned his forehead against mine, gratitude shining in his eyes. We walked hand in hand to the cottage, lulled by the soft hush of the sea. Over tea, we reflected on our journey, from uncertain strangers in a renovated cafe to partners orchestrating a community gathering. We acknowledged the fragile nature of love, how it thrives on trust, communication, and shared goals. Then he hesitantly mentioned a bigger step, moving in together. My heart thumped with anticipation, though I was already spending most nights at his place. Formalizing it felt monumental. Still, I nodded eagerly. We decided to renovate a spare room in the cottage as my studio, so I could work from home more effectively. Gabriel handled scheduling for the cafe, delegating tasks to a new assistant, so we had free afternoons. Our life intertwined. We navigated disagreements over small things, like how to stack mugs or arrange furniture, but each compromise deepened our bond. Over candlelit dinners, we admitted how neither of us had pictured forging a commitment in this remote village, yet now we couldn't imagine leaving. A profound gratitude filled me whenever I caught him gazing at me, love unspoken but clear. As spring crept in, the gulls returned and the days lengthened. One afternoon, I found Gabriel kneeling on the beach, sifting through shells. He beckoned me over, revealing a small, smooth stone shaped like a heart. Smiling shyly, he pressed it into my palm, whispering that he loved me. In that instant, the entire journey, our first shy smiles, the nights apart, the tearful reunions, flashed before me. I held him close, overcome with both wonder and certainty. Despite storms, uncertain schedules, and the risks of loving deeply, we had built something real. Hand in hand, we walked forward, ready for tomorrow. If you're eager to know more about this story, let us know in the comments, and we'll bring you part 2. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with whoever you want, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Just like the road always holds surprises, stories can take you to places you never imagined. See you in the next one.